Hello everyone, and welcome to a new video. So as usual, if you hear some weird noises throughout the intro, my son is just in his little bouncy chair beside me, and so that's probably the noises you're hearing. So if you missed my last video, I am currently working on a recreation of this 1940s jacket. So I am using McCalls 7478 for my pattern, and in the last video I did all the mock-ups for the coat, and today I'm finally starting on it. So this is the fabric I am using for my outer portion of my coat. I have 5.5 meters of it, which fingers crossed it is enough because I am still nervous about that. And for a little bit of a pop of color, I have this beautiful raspberry color. Now it looks quite close to one of the pinks in the coat, so I think it is a perfect combination. And I'm hoping I have enough of this. Now, if I do not have enough of the raspberry for the capelet lining, I do have some extra black lining on hand, so that's kind of backup. This coat calls for an interlining. So an interlining is usually for a warmth layer or to add more structure to a fabric. As I mentioned in my last video, I would have loved to have used a thin slate, but I don't have any in my stash, and so I am just using some plain black cotton broadcloth. Another option for interlining this coat could have been like a flannel, but I didn't have enough in my stash, so black cotton it is. Because I have limited amounts of my fashion fabric, I'm going to be cutting out all the pieces I need out of my interlining first, just so I can try and jigsaw everything together to see if I can actually make this work with the amount of fabrics I have. Because I'm going to need quite a large space to cut this out, I'm going to be heading to my living room, and before I do that, I need to quickly tidy it up. So while I'm tidying, I'm going to let sponsor Marika introduce you to the sponsor of today's video. Speaking of cleaning, today's video is kindly sponsored by Blueland. Blueland makes planet-friendly cleaning products that are made with clean ingredients, are vegan, hypoallergenic, and they come in these beautiful reusable bottles. When Blueland reached out to see if I wanted to try some of their products, I was very excited. As a mama of 3 kids, I need all the help I can get. So the fact that these are safe to use around kids and they are made with naturally derived ingredients that are free from parabens and phthalates, you can sign me right up. Blueland sent me the Clean Essentials Kit, which comes with a glass and mirror cleaner, a multi-surface cleaner, a bathroom cleaner, and a foaming hand soap. And oh my goodness, you guys, they smell amazing. Blueland uses no single-use plastics, and the wrappers that the tablets come in are compostable. To mix up a solution, you just fill your reusable bottle with warm water, pop in the corresponding tablet to that bottle and let it dissolve, and after a few minutes, it's ready to use. Blueland has a special offer for my viewers, and all you have to do is click the link in the description to receive 15% off your first kit. Thank you so much, Blueland, for sponsoring this video. And now, without further ado, let's get to sewing. All right, baby is asleep, living room is clean. Let's get to cutting. Now that I've got all the pieces cut out, I'm going to go through and mark it with some chalk on the wrong side, and so that way I know which side is supposed to be facing up when I'm cutting out the fashion fabric. Once I began laying out my fashion fabric, I discovered quite quickly that it gets pulled out of shape and off the straight grain quite easily, just because of how loose the fabric weave is. So I used the edge of my rug to try and keep it on the straight of grain while cutting. I wanted to try and match the pattern in the fabric as much as possible, so I used the waistline marker as a guide to try and keep the stripes going straight across the pattern pieces. Once I had the majority of the pattern pieces placed, I was pleasantly surprised to see just how much fabric I had left over. With the combination of jigsawing the interlining and using 2-piece sleeves, I was able to shave off almost 1.5 meters from the pattern yardage requirement. So I have all the fabric for the outer coat and the interlayer cut out. I'm going to save cutting out the lining for a little bit later because my back is kind of killing me. So the next step is I need to flatline all of these. Now, I originally had hoped that I would be able to do this by machine, but my fashion fabric just does not like to be sewn through with machine. So I'm going to have to attach the interlining to the coat by hand. Although basting everything together by hand did take longer than expected, 3.5 evenings of work to be exact, I was very happy with the outcome. Once I'd finished basting everything together, I then began the task of serging the edges of the pieces. I opted for the serging because of how easily the fabric frayed due to the nature of the fabric weave, and how the coat would be finished in the future. And to add a bit of decoration, I chose a contrasting thread. So I got a bit carried away last night and I forgot to film this. So these are going to be my pocket flaps. Now you notice how nicely they line up with the pattern underneath. And I'm going to show you quickly how I did that. So you can't really see it on camera, but I have thread traced the bottom edge of my pocket. And I already made one, but then I realized that they weren't equal, so I have to remake another one. So here we go. So I'm going to fold back the seam allowance here and here and line it up with that corner. And then the same on this side. So now I'm going to draw my new guidelines. And that's all done. There we go. So since this is cut on the bias, I need to stabilize this so it won't stretch out. And so what I'm going to do now is put a piece of interfacing on the back that's cut on the straight, and that will hopefully keep everything from shifting. It just looks so pretty when it all lines up. With the interfacing attached, I stitched up the ends of the pocket flap and then added some decorative top stitching a ½ inch away from the edge. Then I basted the raw edges together just slightly under the seam allowance. With the majority of the prep work done, it was time to actually start the construction of the coat, beginning with the darts. Now, it's slightly odd to put darts in first, but because I wanted to put the pockets in before attaching the coat pieces together, this made the most sense to me. With the darts sewn and pressed towards the center front, I then added a 2-inch wide strip of interfacing over the area where I'd be inserting the welt pocket. With the right side of the fabric facing up, I placed the welt pockets and carefully lined everything up, double checking the placement as I pinned. And then I carefully stitched the flap in place. Next, I cut out 4 layers of the pocket pattern. And with the right side of the fabric still facing up, I pinned one of the pocket pieces over the flap. Moving over to the machine, and with the right side facing down, I stitch carefully over the pocket flap stitching to secure the pocket lining in place. Flipping the fabric over once again, I then added a second row of stitching 5/8 of an inch away from the line. And to finish off the box, I added 2 rows of stitching on either end. Next, I marked 2 small triangles about a 1/2 inch away from the edge on both sides of the fabric, and this served as my cutting guide. And then I cut through the center of the box on both sides of the fabric, trying to get as close to the corners as I can without cutting through the stitching line. With that done, I pulled the pocket lining through the slit to the wrong side of the fabric. And then I edge stitched the lining only to the seam allowance to allow for a cleaner finish. This helps to keep the lining from coming out of the pocket. And once that was done, I then added the second pocket lining and pinned and stitched it in place. And to keep that from fraying, I then serged around the edges. With the pocket lining finished, I then stitched the welt pocket flap in place, hiding the stitching in the decorative stitching I added earlier. And then I repeated everything for the other pocket. Alright, now that the pockets are in, wow, blends in really nicely, I am going to start putting together the rest of the coat. Sewing the body of the coat together is fairly straightforward, so I don't really think I need to explain this part. But I will say that when sewing together the long princess seams, I like to sew from the top to the bottom, because that way if any of the seams stretch out slightly or don't line up properly, it's easier to hide that in the hem than it is in the shoulder seam. And once all the side seams were sewn together, I stitched up the shoulder seams. Guys, I love this coat. It's just coming out great. Also, the pink serging on the edge, I'm so glad I went with that. Yeah, it just adds so much to the interior of the coat. And the pockets are wonderful. My hand, I guess, is just reaching the bottom of the pocket there. It's great. I love it. I love this coat. So yeah, okay, let me see. Lighting is crap right now. I am so sorry. But I love how these pockets went in. I definitely recommend this method that I did this time. I will post a link down below to the tutorial that I saw for these welt pockets. Oh, what was the name of the account? Atelier Saison. That's the name of the account that did the tutorial, and I'll post the link down below if you want a more clear tutorial than what I did. Yeah, but I love these pockets, and yeah, they just like disappear into the design. It's great. Okay, moving on. Up next, I need to work on the sleeves and then the collar, and we'll go from there. Yeah, it's lovely. 100% recommend adding decorative serging to projects. It's great. Okay, let's get back to work. These sleeves are very simple to put together. I prefer two-piece sleeves when it comes to coats or jackets, just because you get a little more wiggle room when it comes to fittings, as you have more seams that you could let out if you do need more room. Once both the sleeves are sewn up, I then added 2 rows of ease stitching into the sleeve head. Now, to add more shaping to a sleeve head, I also like to shape my sleeves over a tailor ham and give it a good press. This technique does work much nicer when the fabric is wool, but this one didn't come out too shabby if I do say so myself. Now, once it's all been steamed, it needs to cool down to allow the shaping to stay in place. And once it was cooled, I then stitched it in place and repeated the process for the other sleeve head. With the sleeves in, it's time to work on the collar. Using my magnet seam allowance hack, I cut out the collar pieces. Then I added interfacing for more structure and stitched the collar together. A little tip when it comes to sewing collars: instead of just going straight to the corner and then turning, I recommend going almost to the corner and taking a diagonal stitch or two, and then continuing on your seam. This just helps create a nicer point when you're turning the fabric out. After stitching, I then trimmed the corners and graded the seam allowance. And to help the collar create a nice rolled edge, I then edge stitched the seam allowance to the under collar. With the upper collar done, I then pinned it to the collar stand and stitched everything in place. And once that was done, I pinned and stitched the collar to the jacket. I am thinking I'm going to end this video here. I love how this coat is turning out. The pockets are wonderful. It has a nice weight to it. It has a nice drape to it. I'm definitely really happy with how this is coming out. There's still a lot more work to do on it. Next time I'm going to be working on attaching the capelet and adding the lining and doing all the guts and finishing of this coat. So I hope you stick around, and if you're new to my channel, please click the subscribe button down below if you want to see how this comes out. Thank you to all my regular viewers. You guys are amazing. I do love all your comments. And I also want to say a huge thank you to all my patrons. Your guys' support really means so much to me. So thank you so much. And I have a lot more exciting content coming for you guys in the future. Again, thank you to Blueland for sponsoring this video. And don't forget to check them out with the link down below. I hope you all have a lovely day, and I'll see you again soon with my next video. Bye! Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a raspberry, isn't it? You heard raspberry and you just went, That's right.